The galaxy stretched endlessly, a vast expanse of stars, planets, and mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Among the countless beings who called it home, some made their living in ways others preferred not to think about. Kale Draven was one such individual. He wasn't just any assassin, he was the best. His name carried weight across the stars, whispered with both fear and respect. No matter how dangerous or complicated the job, Kale always completed his contracts. Always. This time, however, something felt different. The message had come through encrypted channels, as usual, a nameless client offering an enormous sum for what seemed like a simple task. Kill a human named Alex Carter. That was all the information provided. No details about why Alex needed to die. No explanation of who wanted him gone. Just a name, a location, and a price tag high enough to make even Kale pause. He accepted without hesitation. After all, questions weren't part of his job description. Assassins didn't ask why. They acted. Still, curiosity lingered in the back of Kale's mind as he prepared for the mission. What could this Alex Carter have done to warrant such a hefty bounty? Was he a criminal? A politician? A scientist hiding secrets too valuable to keep? None of that mattered now. All that mattered was finding him. Kyle arrived on the planet 3 days later. It was a desolate place, far from the bustling trade routes and glittering cities of the galaxy's core. Dust storms swept across barren landscapes, and the only signs of civilization were scattered mining colonies clinging stubbornly to survival. This particular colony was small, barely more than a cluster of prefabricated buildings surrounded by fields of hydroponic crops. It wasn't glamorous, but it served its purpose, providing resources for those willing to endure its harsh conditions. Alex Carter lived here according to the intel Kale had received. At first glance, the man seemed unremarkable. He worked alongside the other colonists, repairing machinery and tending to the crops. There was nothing extraordinary about him. No bodyguards, no hidden weapons, no obvious signs of wealth or power. If anything, Alex blended into the background, almost invisible among the workers. But appearances could be deceiving, and Kale knew better than to underestimate anyone. For 2 days, Kale watched Alex from a distance, observing every move he made. He posed as a trader passing through the colony, selling spare parts and supplies, to avoid suspicion. During that time, he learned several things about his target. First, Alex was meticulous. Whether fixing a broken pump or planting seeds in the soil, he approached every task with precision and care. Second, he was observant. Several times, Kale noticed Alex glancing at areas where shadows shifted slightly, or footsteps echoed faintly, signs that someone might be watching. On the 3rd day, Kale decided to get closer. Under the cover of darkness, he slipped into the outskirts of the colony, moving silently toward Alex's modest home. Like most structures on the planet, it was built from prefabricated materials, designed for functionality rather than comfort. But as Kale circled the building, he spotted something unusual, a series of motion sensors mounted discreetly around the perimeter. They were well hidden, almost invisible, unless you knew exactly where to look. Kale frowned. Why would someone living in such a remote place go to the trouble of installing advanced security systems? Most colonists relied on basic locks and alarms, if anything at all. This level of preparation suggested Alex wasn't just an ordinary farmer. Perhaps there was more to him than met the eye. Carefully avoiding the sensors, Kale moved closer to the house. Through a partially open window, he caught a glimpse of Alex inside. The man sat at a table, hunched over a stack of papers. His face was illuminated by the soft glow of a lantern, revealing deep lines etched into his skin, marks of hardship and experience. For a moment, Kyle hesitated. Something about Alex's expression reminded him of himself. Weary, burdened, yet determined. Shaking off the thought, Kale focused on the task at hand. He scanned the room, searching for anything that might explain why someone wanted Alex dead. The walls were lined with shelves filled with tools, books, and strange gadgets Kale couldn't identify. One device in particular caught his attention. It sat on a workbench near the corner, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. Kyle had never seen anything like it before. Whatever it was, it didn't belong in a place like this. Before he could investigate further, a sound outside drew his attention. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, approached the house. Kyle quickly retreated, melting into the shadows as a figure emerged from the darkness. It was Alex, carrying a rifle slung over his shoulder. He paused for a moment, scanning the area with sharp eyes. Then, seemingly satisfied, he entered the house and locked the door behind him. Kyle remained still, processing what he had seen. Alex was armed and clearly expecting trouble. But why? Who or what was he protecting himself against? And more importantly, did it have anything to do with the contract Kyle had been hired to fulfill? As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Kyle returned to his ship. He had gathered plenty of information, but none of it added up. Alex Carter wasn't the helpless victim Kyle had anticipated. In fact, he seemed prepared for anything or anyone who might come after him. For the first time in years, Kyle felt uncertain about a mission. Something about this job didn't sit right, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. Still, uncertainty wouldn't stop him. Kyle had faced challenges before, and he always found a way to overcome them. Whatever secrets Alex was hiding, Kyle intended to uncover them, and when the time came, he would complete his contract, as he always did. Kyle Draven wasn't used to being surprised. Over the years, he had learned to expect the unexpected, to adapt to any situation no matter how unpredictable. But Alex Carter was unlike anyone Kyle had ever encountered before. The man was a walking contradiction. Ordinary yet extraordinary, unassuming yet undeniably dangerous. Every time Kyle thought he had figured him out, something new would surface, forcing him to rethink everything. For the next few days, Kyle continued his surveillance, keeping a careful distance while gathering more information. He followed Alex as he went about his daily routine, repairing equipment, checking the hydroponic fields, and occasionally chatting with other colonists. On the surface, Alex seemed friendly enough, exchanging pleasantries and offering help whenever someone needed it. Yet beneath that calm exterior, there was an alertness that never faded. It was as if Alex carried an invisible shield, always ready to defend himself at a moment's notice. One afternoon, Kyle decided to test those defenses. Under the pretense of needing repairs for his ship, he approached Alex directly. The encounter was brief, but telling. Alex greeted him warmly, just like he did with everyone else, but his eyes betrayed a sharp intelligence. When Kyle mentioned having trouble with one of his ship's systems, Alex immediately suggested solutions, not vague guesses, but precise fixes that demonstrated a deep understanding of mechanics. It was clear that Alex knew what he was talking about, but there was also something else in his tone, a subtle undercurrent of caution. As they spoke, Kyle noticed small details that most people would overlook. For instance, Alex positioned himself so that he could see both Kyle and the surrounding area at all times. His hands moved deliberately, never lingering too long on tools or objects that could be used as weapons. Even the way he laughed sounded practiced, almost rehearsed. These weren't the habits of an ordinary farmer. They were the instincts of someone who had faced danger before and survived. After their conversation ended, Kyle returned to his ship, mulling over what he had observed. Alex was clever, resourceful, and highly skilled. But why? What had driven him to develop such abilities? And why was he living in such a remote place, far from the centers of power where his talents might be better utilized? Determined to find answers, Kyle began digging deeper into Alex's past. Using the advanced hacking tools at his disposal, he accessed restricted databases and pieced together fragments of information. What he discovered only added to the mystery. According to official records, Alex Carter had once worked as an engineer for a classified government project known as Eclipse. The project had been shrouded in secrecy, with little public knowledge about its purpose or outcomes. Rumors suggested it involved experimental technology capable of altering reality itself, though nothing concrete had ever been proven. Most reports claimed that Eclipse had been abandoned after catastrophic failures led to the deaths of several researchers. However, Cale suspected otherwise. If Alex truly had ties to the project, then his current lifestyle made even less sense. Why would someone with access to groundbreaking technology choose to live as a farmer on a forgotten planet? Unless, of course, he was hiding something, or running from someone. Cale's suspicions grew stronger when he stumbled upon a series of anomalies in the colony itself. As he explored the area around Alex's home, he noticed patterns that hinted at deliberate design. Hidden traps lined the paths leading to the house, designed to incapacitate intruders without killing them. False trails led away from key locations, confusing anyone trying to track Alex's movements. Even the layout of the crops seemed strategically planned, creating natural barriers that funneled potential threats toward specific points. It was clear that Alex had put considerable effort into fortifying his surroundings. But against whom? Was he expecting visitors like Cale, or was there another threat lurking in the shadows? One evening, Cale decided to push his investigation further. Under cover of darkness, he ventured closer to Alex's property than ever before. This time he bypassed the outer defenses with ease, relying on his training to avoid detection. As he crept toward the house, he spotted something unusual near the back entrance, a series of symbols carved into the metal doorframe. At first glance they appeared random, but upon closer inspection, Cale realized they formed a pattern, a sequence of numbers and shapes that seemed familiar, though he couldn't quite place them. Curiosity got the better of him. Ignoring the risk, Cale slipped inside the house. The interior was dimly lit, with only a faint glow emanating from a device sitting on the workbench. It pulsed rhythmically, emitting soft whispers that sent chills down Cale's spine. He had seen strange things in his line of work, but this was different. The device didn't look like anything from this galaxy or any galaxy he knew of. Its surface shimmered with an otherworldly energy, as if it existed between dimensions. Before Cale could examine it further, a noise startled him. Footsteps echoed from the hallway, growing louder with each passing second. Reacting instinctively, Cale ducked behind a stack of crates, holding his breath as Alex entered the room. The man moved cautiously, scanning the area with sharp eyes. For a moment, their gazes locked, though Alex couldn't see Cale hidden in the shadows. Then, unexpectedly, Alex smiled. It wasn't a warm or friendly smile. It was knowing, almost amused. "I know you're here," he said softly, his voice steady and calm. "You've been watching me for days. I'd like to know why." Cale froze. He had been careful, meticulous in covering his tracks. How had Alex figured it out? More importantly, what would he do now that he knew? To his surprise, Alex didn't reach for a weapon or call for help. Instead, he leaned against the workbench, crossing his arms as if inviting conversation. "Whoever sent you made a mistake," he continued. "They think I'm easy prey, but they don't understand what I'm capable of. You seem smarter than that, so tell me, assassin, what are you really after?" Cale hesitated. This wasn't part of the plan. He had expected fear, panic, maybe even aggression. Not this quiet confidence, this eerie sense of control. For the first time in his career, he found himself questioning whether completing the contract was worth the cost. Whatever secrets Alex held, they were far greater than Cale had anticipated, and potentially far more dangerous. But one thing was certain: Cale wouldn't leave until he uncovered the truth. Kyle didn't move. He stayed hidden behind the crates, his mind racing as Alex's words hung in the air. The man wasn't acting like a target. He was behaving like someone who already knew the game, and knew how to play it better than anyone else. This wasn't fear or panic. It was control. Alex had anticipated Cale's presence, maybe even planned for it. How? And why hadn't he tried to stop him yet? Alex waited patiently, his arms still crossed. When Cale didn't respond, he sighed and shook his head. "You don't have to answer me," he said, his tone calm but firm. "But if you're here to kill me, you should know something. I'm not running anymore. I've spent years looking over my shoulder, waiting for people like you to show up. If this is the end, then fine. But I think you're smarter than that. You wouldn't be standing there if you didn't have questions. Cale's grip tightened on the weapon strapped to his side. Questions. That was exactly what he had. Too many of them. Who was Alex Carter? Why did someone want him dead badly enough to hire one of the galaxy's deadliest assassins? And what was that strange device sitting on the workbench, pulsing with energy that seemed to hum with secrets too dangerous to ignore? Finally, Cale stepped out from his hiding spot. His movements were slow and deliberate, showing he wasn't about to attack, at least not yet. Alex watched him carefully but didn't flinch. There was no sign of fear in his eyes, only a quiet resolve. "You're right," Cale said, his voice low and steady. "I do have questions, starting with why someone paid a fortune to see you dead." Alex nodded as if he'd expected the question. "And I'll answer them," he replied. "But first tell me who sent you. Was it the syndicate or someone higher up?" "The client's identity doesn't matter," Kyle shot back. "What matters is the job. You're the target. That's all I need to know." Alex chuckled softly, though there was no humor in it. "That's where you're wrong. Whoever hired you probably didn't tell you everything. They never do. If you understood what's really going on, you might rethink pulling that trigger." Cale frowned. "Are you saying I shouldn't trust my client?" "I'm saying you shouldn't trust anyone," Alex corrected. "Least of all the people who pay you to kill strangers without asking questions." The room fell silent for a moment. Cale studied Alex, searching for any sign of deception, but the man's expression remained steady, almost unnervingly so. He wasn't bluffing, or at least Kyle couldn't tell if he was. "Let's say I believe you," Kyle said finally. "What makes you so important? Why does someone want you dead?" Alex hesitated, glancing at the glowing device on the workbench. For the first time, a flicker of unease crossed his face. "It's complicated," he admitted. "But if you're willing to listen, I'll explain. Just remember, you asked for this." Cale nodded. "Talk." Alex took a deep breath and began. "Years ago, I worked on a project called Eclipse. It was supposed to revolutionize technology, create new ways to explore the galaxy. At least that's what they told us. In reality, it was far more dangerous. The goal wasn't exploration, it was control. They wanted to manipulate reality itself, bend it to their will, and they succeeded too well." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The experiments destabilized entire dimensions. Alternate realities started bleeding into ours, causing chaos everywhere. People disappeared, worlds collapsed. It was a disaster. I barely escaped with my life. Cale listened intently, his curiosity growing with every word. "So you're saying this thing," he gestured toward the device on the workbench, "is part of that project?" Alex nodded. "It's a prototype, one of the few pieces of technology left from Eclipse. It can open portals to other realities, but each use weakens the fabric of existence. That's why they shut it down, or claim they did. The truth is, they didn't destroy it. They hid it, hoping to find a way to make it work safely, but they can't. No one can. Not without risking everything. And you?" Cale pressed. "Why are you involved?" "Because I helped build it," Alex confessed. "I know how it works, and I know how to stop it. That's why they want me dead. If I disappear, the knowledge dies with me. But if I live..." He trailed off, his gaze darkening. "Let's just say some people would rather see the galaxy burn than give up that kind of power." Kyle absorbed this information, piecing it together in his mind. It explained a lot. The high price tag on Alex's head, the advanced security, measures around his home, even the cryptic symbols carved into the doorframe. Everything pointed to one conclusion. Alex wasn't just a target. He was a key to something far bigger, something that could change the galaxy forever. "So what now?" Kyle asked after a long pause. "If what you're saying is true, then killing you won't solve anything. It'll just make things worse." Alex smiled faintly, though there was no joy in it. "Exactly. Which brings me to my offer. Help me destroy the device. Together we can put an end to this before it's too late." Cale stared at him, weighing the risks. On one hand, walking away meant abandoning the contract and potentially angering whoever had hired him. On the other hand, completing the job might unleash forces beyond anyone's control. For the first time in his career, Cale found himself torn between duty and morality. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "But don't mistake this for trust. If you try anything—" "I won't," Alex interrupted. "You have my word." Kyle nodded, though he wasn't sure how much weight that promise carried. He turned to leave, his mind swirling with possibilities. As he stepped outside, the cool night air hit his face, grounding him in the present. Whatever decision he made next, one thing was clear. This mission had just become far more complicated and far more dangerous than he ever imagined. Over the next few days, Cale kept his distance, retreating to his ship to process everything Alex had told him. He reviewed the data he'd gathered, cross-referencing it with rumors and reports about Eclipse. The more he learned, the more convinced he became that Alex was telling the truth. The project had been real, and its consequences were catastrophic. If the device fell into the wrong hands, the results could be unimaginable. But trusting Alex wasn't easy. Cale had spent years honing his instincts, learning to separate truth from lies. Yet something about Alex felt genuine, almost painfully so. The man wasn't trying to manipulate him or hide behind false promises. He was offering a chance to do something meaningful, to protect the galaxy instead of tearing it apart. Eventually, Cale made his decision. He returned to Alex's house under cover of darkness, finding the man exactly where he'd left him, working quietly at the bench. Without a word, Cale set down his weapons and took a seat across from him. "I'm in," he said simply. "But we do this my way." Alex looked up, surprise flickering across his face before settling into a smile. "Welcome aboard," he replied. "We'll need all the help we can get." For the first time in years, Cale felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. Kyle and Alex spent the next several days preparing for what lay ahead. Their alliance was uneasy, built on necessity rather than trust. Kyle still kept one hand near his weapon at all times, watching Alex closely for any sign of betrayal. But Alex didn't seem concerned. He worked tirelessly, gathering supplies, repairing old equipment, and sketching out plans on scraps of paper. If he noticed Cale's suspicion, he didn't let it show. Their first task was to learn more about the people hunting Alex. Whoever they were, they clearly had resources, enough to track him down and hire someone like Cale. The two men agreed that finding the source of the threat was crucial. Without knowing who was behind the assassination attempt, they couldn't hope to stop them. Using a combination of Cale's hacking skills and Alex's technical knowledge, they tapped into encrypted communication networks. It wasn't easy. The Syndicate, the shadowy organization rumored to be involved in Eclipse, had layers of security protecting its data. But Alex had experience navigating such systems from his time working on the project, and together, they managed to uncover fragments of information. What they found was troubling. The Syndicate wasn't acting alone. They were being directed by someone higher up, someone with immense power and influence. Names like Director Voss and Black Veil Initiative appeared repeatedly in the intercepted messages. These weren't just criminals or opportunists. They were orchestrators pulling strings across the galaxy to achieve their goals. One message stood out in particular. It mentioned a deadline. Operation Convergence must proceed as scheduled. Secure the prototype before Phase 2 begins. The urgency in the tone suggested that time was running out. Whatever Operation Convergence was, it involved the device Alex had shown Kyle, the one capable of opening portals to alternate realities. "We need to move fast," Alex said after reviewing the data. His voice was tense, the calm demeanor he usually maintained replaced by worry. "If they get their hands on this thing, they'll use it without thinking about the consequences." Cale nodded. "Where do we start?" Alex pointed to a map of the galaxy displayed on a cracked screen. "There's an orbital station near the edge of Sector 7. It's remote, heavily guarded, and perfect for conducting secret experiments. My guess is they've moved the main Eclipse core there." "Then that's where we go," Cale replied. "But how do we get past their defenses?" "That's where you come in," Alex said with a faint smile. "You're the assassin. Sneaking into places undetected is your specialty. Kale raised an eyebrow. And what's your role in all this? I'll handle the tech side, Alex answered. I can disable security systems and keep us one step ahead. Trust me, I've dealt with worse. The two men spent the rest of the day finalizing their plan. They scavenged parts from the colony to build tools they might need: EMP disruptors, cloaking devices, and even makeshift explosives. Kyle insisted on testing everything thoroughly, unwilling to rely on anything that hadn't been proven effective. Alex, meanwhile, focused on creating false identities for them, forging documents that would allow them to blend in among the station's crew. As they worked, Kale found himself observing Alex more closely. There was something admirable about the man's determination, his refusal to give up even when the odds seemed insurmountable. It reminded Kale of his own resilience, though their motivations were different. Where Kale had always acted out of duty or profit, Alex fought for something bigger: survival, justice, maybe even redemption. Despite their progress, tension lingered between them. Kale still struggled to fully trust Alex, and Alex seemed aware of it. He didn't push for answers or demand reassurance, but there were moments when his frustration showed. Once, while calibrating a scanner, he muttered under his breath, "If you're going to second-guess every move I make, we might as well turn back now." Kale paused, considering his words. "I'm not here because I trust you," he admitted. "I'm here because stopping them is the right thing to do. Don't mistake cooperation for friendship." Alex looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. Just remember, we're on the same side now." The journey to the orbital station took nearly 2 days. They traveled in Kale's ship, a sleek vessel designed for speed and stealth. Most of the trip passed in silence, each man lost in his own thoughts. Kale reviewed their plan over and over, searching for weaknesses. Alex tinkered with the equipment, making last-minute adjustments to ensure everything functioned properly. When they finally arrived, the station loomed, ahead of them like a fortress floating in space. Its surface was jagged and metallic, dotted with glowing lights and massive docking bays. Sensors scanned incoming ships, identifying friend from foe. For anyone else, getting inside would have been impossible. But Kale and Alex had prepared for this moment. Using the forged credentials Alex had created, they posed as maintenance workers sent to repair a malfunctioning generator. The ruse worked. The station's automated systems flagged their ship as authorized personnel, granting them access without question. As they docked, Kale glanced at Alex. "This is it," he said quietly. "No turning back." "No turning back," Alex echoed, gripping the device they had brought along, a portable EMP unit disguised as a toolbox. They disembarked cautiously, blending in with the steady flow of workers moving through the corridors. The air smelled faintly of oil and ozone, and the hum of machinery filled the background. Kale led the way, memorizing the layout as they went. Alex followed close behind, carrying the EMP unit and keeping an eye on their surroundings. Their destination was a restricted area deep within the station, marked as Research Lab Delta on the schematics they'd obtained. According to the intercepted messages, the Eclipse Core was being stored there, guarded by elite mercenaries and state-of-the-art security systems. Breaking in wouldn't be easy, but they had no choice. As they approached the lab, Alex activated the EMP unit, disabling cameras and locking doors along their path. Kyle covered him, ready to neutralize anyone who crossed their trail. So far, so good. But as they reached the entrance to the lab, disaster struck. A woman stepped out from behind a corner, her weapon drawn. She was tall and athletic, with sharp features and cold eyes. Her uniform identified her as part of the station's security team, but Kale recognized her instantly: Claire Dawson, a mercenary known for her ruthlessness. He hadn't seen her in years, but her reputation preceded her. Well, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Look who decided to pay us a visit. Kale Draven himself, and his little friend." Kale tensed, his hand hovering over his weapon. "Claire," he acknowledged, his tone neutral. I didn't expect to see you here. She smirked. Let's cut the pleasantries. You're not here to fix generators. You're here for the core, and I'm here to stop you. Before Kale could respond, Alex stepped forward. Wait, he said firmly. You don't understand what's at stake. If they activate the core, it'll tear apart reality itself. Billions will die. Claire laughed bitterly. Save it. I know all about Eclipse. I also know who pays my bills. And it's not you. Kale exchanged a glance with Alex. They both knew what this meant. A fight. Claire wasn't going to back down, and neither were they. With a swift motion, Kale drew his weapon and fired, forcing Claire to dive for cover. Alarms blared throughout the station as reinforcements rushed toward their location. Alex activated the EMP unit again, temporarily disabling nearby systems, but it wouldn't hold for long. Go, Kale shouted, gesturing toward the lab door. I'll hold them off. Alex hesitated, torn between helping Kale and completing their mission. Finally, he nodded and sprinted inside, leaving Kale to face Claire and her team alone. The ensuing battle was chaotic. Kale moved with precision, taking down enemies one by one while avoiding lethal shots. Claire proved to be a formidable opponent, matching him blow for blow. They clashed in the narrow corridors, trading insults and blows, as alarms wailed around them. Meanwhile, Alex fought his own battles inside the lab. The room was filled with consoles, monitors, and the ominous glow of the Eclipse core. He worked quickly, inputting commands to shut down the system. But just as he thought he had succeeded, a new threat emerged. A group of mercenaries burst into the lab, surrounding him. Outnumbered and outgunned, Alex raised his hands in surrender, but only for a moment. With a sudden burst of ingenuity, he triggered a failsafe he'd programmed into the EMP unit earlier. The entire lab plunged into darkness, giving him precious seconds to escape. By the time Kale rejoined him, both men were battered but alive. Together they fled the station, narrowly avoiding capture as explosions rocked the facility behind them. As they boarded the ship and launched into space, Alex turned to Kale with a weary smile. We did it, he said. For now, at least. Kale didn't respond. He stared out the viewport, watching the station shrink into the distance. For the first time in his life, he felt uncertain about what came next. The escape from the orbital station was a blur of adrenaline and chaos. Kyle and Alex barely had time to catch their breath as they piloted the ship away from the crumbling facility. Behind them, explosions lit up the darkness of space, sending shockwaves rippling through the void. The mercenaries guarding the station were either dead or scrambling to contain the damage. For now, at least, they had bought themselves some time. But neither man felt relief. Their victory was hollow, a temporary reprieve rather than a permanent solution. As the ship entered hyperspace, Alex slumped into the co-pilot's seat, his face pale with exhaustion. We stopped them this time, he said quietly, more to himself than to Kale. But it won't last. They'll regroup, find another way to get the core operational. Kale didn't respond immediately. His hands gripped the controls tightly, knuckles white as he focused on navigating the ship. He knew Alex was right. Destroying the lab had been a gamble, one that might only delay the inevitable. The Syndicate, and whoever was pulling their strings, wouldn't give up easily. They had invested too much in Eclipse to let it slip through their fingers. Finally, Kale spoke. What happens next? He asked, his voice low and steady. They'll come after us again. Probably sooner than we think. Alex nodded grimly. We need to destroy the core completely, not just disable it, but make sure it can never be used again. That means finding its main components and dismantling them piece by piece. And where are these components? Kale pressed. You said the device you showed me was a prototype. Are there others like it? Yes, Alex admitted reluctantly. There are fragments of the original Eclipse system scattered across the galaxy. Each one is dangerous on its own, but together, they could recreate the full power of the project. Kyle sighed, leaning back in his seat. This mission was getting bigger and messier with every passing day. So we're looking at multiple targets, he summarized. That's going to take time, resources, and a lot of luck. And allies, Alex added. We can't do this alone. We'll need help. Cale shot him a skeptical look. Trust isn't exactly my strong suit, and given what just happened with Claire, I'm not eager to bring anyone else into this. I'm not suggesting we trust blindly, Alex countered. But we're outnumbered. If we want any chance of succeeding, we'll need people who understand the stakes and who have skills we don't. Reluctantly, Cale agreed. He didn't like the idea of involving outsiders, but Alex had a point. They couldn't fight an entire organization by themselves. Still, choosing who to trust would require careful consideration. One wrong move could doom them all. Over the next few days, Cale and Alex worked tirelessly to plan their next steps. Using the data they had stolen from the orbital station, they identified 3 key locations where fragments of the Eclipse system were likely being stored. Each site presented its own challenges: heavily fortified bunkers, remote outposts, and even a research vessel drifting in uncharted space. While they prepared for the missions ahead, Alex reached out to a small network of contacts he had maintained since leaving the Eclipse project. These were individuals who had also worked on the project, or had been affected by its fallout, and shared Alex's desire to see it destroyed. Among them was a former scientist named Mia Harper, who had once overseen the development of the core's stabilization algorithms. She agreed to meet them at a neutral location, a trading hub orbiting a dying star. When they arrived, Mia was waiting for them in a dimly lit cantina. She was younger than Cale had expected, with sharp eyes and an air of quiet determination. After exchanging pleasantries, she got straight to the point. "You're asking for a lot," she said, her tone cautious but firm. "Helping you puts a target on my back. Why should I risk my life for this?" "Because if you don't, billions will die," Alex replied without hesitation. "Eclipse isn't just a weapon, it's a catastrophe waiting to happen. You know that better than anyone." Mia hesitated, glancing between Alex and Kyle. Finally, she nodded. "All right, I'm in, but I have conditions. First, no secrets. I need to know everything you're planning. Second, I call the shots when it comes to the tech. If we're dealing with Eclipse components, I'm the expert." Kylie bristled at the idea of taking orders from someone else, but Alex quickly intervened. "Deal," he said firmly. "Welcome aboard." With Mia's expertise added to their team, they refined their strategy. She provided valuable insights into the inner workings of the Eclipse system, helping them anticipate potential threats and weaknesses. Her presence also boosted morale, something they desperately needed after the narrow escape from the orbital station. Their first target was a military bunker buried deep beneath the surface of a desert planet. Intelligence suggested it housed a critical fragment of the core, a containment module designed to stabilize the energy fluctuations caused by portal creation. Without it, the rest of the system would be useless, or so they hoped. The infiltration went smoothly at first. Kyle led the way, using his stealth skills to bypass guards and disable security systems. Alex and Mia followed closely behind, carrying equipment needed to extract the module. As they descended deeper into the bunker, the air grew colder, thick with the hum of machinery. But halfway through the mission, disaster struck. An alarm blared suddenly, red lights flashing as automated defenses sprang to life. Doors slammed shut, trapping them in a narrow corridor. Heavy turrets emerged from the walls, targeting them with relentless accuracy. "Move," Kyle shouted, firing his weapon to cover their retreat. Bullets ricocheted off the metal walls as they scrambled for cover. Alex and Mia worked frantically to disable the turrets, but the system was more advanced than anything they had encountered before. "We're running out of time," Mia yelled over the noise. "If we don't shut these down soon, we're dead." Thinking quickly, Alex accessed a nearby terminal, typing furiously to override the system. Sweat dripped from his forehead as lines of code scrolled across the screen. Just as the turrets zeroed in on their position, the guns powered down, leaving the corridor eerily silent. "That was close," Alex muttered, exhaling sharply. "Too close." They pressed on, finally reaching the containment module. It was housed in a reinforced chamber, protected by layers of encryption and physical barriers. Working together, Alex and Mia managed to bypass the safeguards, extracting the module just as reinforcements arrived. "We need to go. Now!" Kale barked, leading the charge back toward the surface. They fought their way through waves of soldiers, relying on teamwork and sheer determination to survive. By the time they reached the ship, they were battered and bloodied, but alive. As they lifted off, watching the bunker shrink into the distance, Mia turned to Alex with a grim smile. "Well, that was fun." Alex chuckled weakly. "Yeah, let's not do it again anytime soon." Despite the danger, they had succeeded. The containment module was theirs, and with it, they had dealt a significant blow to the Syndicate's plans. But Kale knew this was only the beginning. There were still 2 fragments to recover, and the closer they got to their goal, the harder their enemies would fight to stop them. For now, though, they allowed themselves a brief moment of triumph. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, a testament to their resilience and resolve. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Back aboard the ship, Kyle found himself reflecting on how far they had come. When he first took the contract to kill Alex, he never imagined he'd end up fighting alongside him. Yet here they were, united by a shared purpose. For the first time in years, Kale felt a sense of belonging, not as a tool or a weapon, but as part of something greater. As the stars streaked past outside the viewport, he made a silent vow. No matter what happened, he would see this mission through to the end. Not because it was his job, but because it was the right thing to do. In the vast expanse of space, far beyond what any human eye could see, there existed a civilization known as the Vorthak. The Vorthak were an ancient and powerful race, their empire stretching across countless star systems. They ruled over a council called the Hegemony, which governed millions of planets and species. To them, every living thing in the universe fell into one of 2 categories: prey or pests. Prey species were those that could be used, either for labor, resources, or assimilation into their empire. Pests, on the other hand, were considered too weak or useless to bother with, and were often wiped out without hesitation. For centuries, the Vorthak had traveled through galaxies, conquering worlds and classifying life forms they encountered along the way. It was a system that worked well for them, allowing them to expand their dominance effortlessly. But everything changed when a scout ship returned from a distant planet called Earth. The scout ship landed gently on the surface of Zerath, the central hub of the Vorthak Empire. A young female officer named Ava Carter stepped off the vessel, her face pale but determined. She walked briskly toward the council chamber where the leaders of the hegemony awaited her report. As she entered the grand hall, her boots clicked softly against the polished black floor. The room was filled with towering figures cloaked in shimmering robes, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. At the center of the chamber stood Kale Draven, one of the oldest and most respected members of the council. Ava took a deep breath before speaking. "Council," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "I have encountered a new species during my reconnaissance mission. They call themselves humans." The council members exchanged glances, some leaning forward with curiosity, while others remained indifferent. Humans were not entirely unknown to the Vorthak. They had been mentioned briefly in earlier reports, but nothing substantial had ever come of it. Most assumed they were just another primitive species unworthy of attention. "Describe them," Kyle said, his tone calm yet commanding. His presence demanded respect, even among his peers. "They are different," Ava replied cautiously. "Physically, they appear fragile compared to us. Their technology is rudimentary at best. Yet there is something about them that feels unpredictable. During my observation, I witnessed acts of aggression, cooperation, creativity, all within a single day. They seem capable of adapting quickly to challenges, almost instinctively." Kyle raised an eyebrow. "Adaptability is common among prey species. What makes these humans unique?" Ava hesitated, choosing her next words carefully. "It's not just adaptability. It's how they use it. For example, I observed one group constructing tools from scraps found in their environment. Another group devised complex strategies to hunt animals much larger than themselves. And then there's their social structure. It's chaotic, yes, but also highly cooperative. They fight among themselves constantly, yet when faced with an external threat, they unite with remarkable speed. Her words hung in the air, met with silence. Some council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure how to respond. Others dismissed her concerns outright, waving her observations away as irrelevant. Commander Isaac Hale, a burly male with sharp features, scoffed loudly. "You're telling me we should worry about a bunch of savages wielding sticks and stones? Ava, you've spent too long watching them. Let's send a fleet to Earth, gather samples, and move on. This will be no different from any other conquest." Cale frowned but said nothing. He had seen countless civilizations rise and fall under the hegemony's rule, each one predictable in its own way, but something about Ava's description gnawed at him. Unpredictable, chaotic, resilient. These were traits rarely seen in prey species. Despite his unease, the majority of the council agreed with Isaac's plan. A small fleet would be dispatched to Earth to assess the situation further. If humans truly posed no threat, they could be classified as prey and added to the hegemony's growing list of conquered worlds. If they proved troublesome, extermination would be swift and efficient. As the meeting adjourned, Kyle lingered behind, staring thoughtfully at the holographic map of Earth displayed in the center of the chamber. Something told him this decision might come back to haunt them all. Meanwhile, on Earth, life continued as usual for most people. In a quiet Midwestern town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, Emily Dawson went about her daily routine. As the local sheriff, she was accustomed to dealing with minor disturbances, a stolen bicycle here, a noisy neighbor there. Nothing out of the ordinary ever seemed to happen in her sleepy little corner of the world. That changed one evening when Emily received a strange call from a farmer named Joe Miller. His voice trembled as he described seeing strange lights hovering over his fields late at night. "They weren't planes or drones, Sheriff," he insisted. "These things moved like nothing I've ever seen before." Curious but skeptical, Emily decided to investigate. She drove out to Joe's farm just after sunset, her patrol car kicking up dust along the dirt road. When she arrived, she found him pacing nervously near the edge of his property. Following his gaze, she squinted into the darkness. At first, she saw nothing unusual. Then, suddenly, a cluster of bright orbs appeared in the sky, hovering silently above the trees. Emily reached for her radio to call for backup, but before she could speak, the lights darted downward, disappearing behind the tree line. Her heart raced as she grabbed her flashlight and headed toward the woods, motioning for Joe to stay put. Pushing aside branches and stepping carefully over roots, she ventured deeper into the forest until she stumbled upon something that made her blood run cold. There, lying motionless in a clearing, was a man she recognized from town. Tom Harris, the owner of the local hardware store. His clothes were torn and his skin bore strange burn marks as if he'd been exposed to intense heat. Emily knelt beside him, checking for a pulse. Relief washed over her when she felt a faint beat beneath her fingertips. Before she could decide what to do next, a rustling sound came from the bushes nearby. Spinning around, she shone her flashlight into the shadows, expecting to see an animal. Instead, she froze as a pair of glowing eyes stared back at her. The creature stepped into the light, its form tall and insect-like, with elongated limbs and a sleek metallic exoskeleton. It tilted its head, studying her with an unsettling intelligence. Emily's instincts kicked in. She scrambled backward, fumbling for her gun. Before she could fire, the creature emitted a high-pitched screech and vanished into thin air, leaving only silence in its wake. Shaken but determined, Emily dragged Tom back to her car and sped toward the hospital. Along the way, she couldn't shake the image of those glowing eyes from her mind. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't natural, and it certainly wasn't friendly. Back at the station, Emily tried to file a report, but her superiors laughed off her claims. "Aliens? Really, Emily?" her boss chided. "Maybe you've been watching too many movies." Frustrated but unwilling to give up, Emily turned to Ryan Cole, a former soldier who now ran the town's mechanic shop. Ryan had always struck her as someone who could handle himself in tough situations, and she trusted his judgment. After hearing her story, he didn't mock her like everyone else. Instead, he nodded gravely. "We need to figure out what's going on," Ryan said. "If half of what you're saying is true, this isn't just some random incident. Someone, or something, is targeting our town." Together they began piecing together clues, starting with the mysterious disappearance of several townsfolk over the past few weeks. Each case shared eerie similarities: unexplained lights in the sky, sudden silences in nature, and no trace of the missing persons left behind. Their investigation led them to the outskirts of town, where they discovered a crashed object partially buried in the ground. Upon closer inspection, they realized it wasn't man-made, it was alien. The realization hit them like a punch to the gut. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and whatever had arrived wasn't interested in making friends. Unbeknownst to Emily and Ryan, their actions were being watched, not just by the Vorthak fleet lurking in orbit above Earth, but also by forces within the hegemony itself. Forces that would soon learn humanity was far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated.